All right, hello you. Welcome to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. I am Emerson Lotzia, wishing everyone a good morning, especially America's team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, but also good morning to everyone except the Chargers and Raiders, who robbed the planet of a tie last night. We will poke over to the NBA and NHL. Yes, we got a beefy college football national championship preview with the beefy Julian Edlow. But first, coming into the weekend, Week 18 in the NFL, it looked like a bit of a dog, right? However, we ended up with 3 overtime games, 1 stunning upset, and some thrilling last-second reversals of fortune. Now the playoff field of 14 teams is set. We'll start with an NFC Super Wild Card Weekend DK Sportsbook preview with DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich and Jeff Ulrich. Pierce, looking at who enters this upcoming slate of games favored, all the lines, all that jazz, the odds supporting their quest for a title, what stands out to you here?
Yeah, if I'm going to play some of these NFC odds, I'm not going to change my stance. It's been play the long shots. What are we doing? Have you watched the 2021 season? 2022 has been even crazier. Why do we just expect the chalk to win? Why do we expect the favorites to win? I don't need to summarize the season. If you watched football yesterday, then you know that the long shots have a chance. If the Jaguars can beat the Colts, then anyone can win. Take the Eagles. Why not? You get big-time odds. Anything can happen. Any team can have a COVID outbreak. Maybe Jalen Hurts starts connecting some passes. They get the rush attack working. Why not play the long shots?
Okay, Jeff, what's your strategy here, dude? You going to play them long shots?
I mean, Pierce is just a little rattled because the Chargers got beat last night. But I think the Eagles are probably a bridge too far for me. But there's definitely some teams that could still get hot. I do kind of agree with the sentiment. I mean, I think that you look at teams like the 49ers, the Patriots. These are teams that, people may have been hot on in the middle of the season. But even with San Francisco's big win, I mean, they're still available at plus 1,000. Yeah, I mean, this offense could absolutely just cut right through the NFC. And on the Patriots side of the ball, I mean, this is a team everyone was like, oh, yeah, the Patriots are back like 3 weeks ago. Lost a couple games now, and now they're at plus 1,000. Telling me that Bill Belichick in the playoffs can't get hot? Absolutely. So, yeah, it's going to be a wild, crazy, playoffs, obviously. I think for me, the biggest standout in the lines for this week, just in the NFC, I mean, we'll get to it, but really close line between the 49ers and Cowboys. And then, the Patriots at plus 4.5. Again, interesting considering how high the sentiment was on this team 3 weeks ago.
All right, guys, let's talk a little bit more about those Eagles then. So it's Eagles-Bucks. That's going to kick off the NFC games on Sunday. Tom Brady and company favored by 8.5. So, Jeff, we just heard how kind of Pierce feels about the Eagles. How confident are you, though, that they can actually cover? Not talking win outright, but do you think they can cover?
Sure. And, I mean, again, you look at the trends here. I mean, Tampa is 6-2 covering at home. I kind of throw all this stuff out, right? We're in the playoffs now. And realistically, it's a different Tampa Bay team. And yes, Mike Evans looks great. He looked great against Carolina. The Eagles have been very good at shutting down opposing wide receivers this year. And there's no Chris Godwin, no Antonio Brown. And they're going to be relying on Gronk. I want nothing to do with Tampa Bay covering over a touchdown in this spot. I think the Eagles are the epitome of a scrappy team. Do I think they can make a run to the Super Bowl? Absolutely not. Do I think a rested kind of Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert could connect here and put up some points on a Tampa Bay defense that just about lost to the Jets 2 weeks ago? Yeah, absolutely. Plus 8.5 for Philly, I'm interested. Quite frankly, I'm actually interested in the money line in this game for the Philadelphia Eagles as well. I think this is a spot where Jalen Hurts could absolutely win this game with his legs. I'm all over the Eagles here.
Wow. Pierce, you just want to explain to us why you're all over the Eagles besides the fact that it's just backing them underdogs?
It was great to hear Jeff come all the way to the money line, but it makes sense. I mean, we're talking about, the Eagles don't have a chance. Well, let's just look at their first game. They absolutely have a chance. If we think that they can stay within the spread, that means they're within a touchdown. That means they're within striking distance at the end of this game. And as Jeff mentioned, Tampa is not the same team that has been, on fire at home this season. Tom Brady has looked good when he has weapons, but he doesn't have weapons. Tyler Johnson, Rashad Perriman, possibly Keyshawn Vaughn as the starting running back, that's trouble. They've won games recently because they played the Panthers twice. They almost lost to the Jets. They did lose to New Orleans. And why did they lose to New Orleans? because they didn't have any offensive weapons. And guess what? They still don't have any offensive weapons. We've seen this show before. Steve Buchanan pointed out a week or so ago that, hey, remember Tom Brady with the Patriots when he didn't have weapons? They lost games and he got run out of town. Well, here we are again. They absolutely can lose this game. I know that we need Philadelphia to show up. We need Jalen Hurts to have a magical game. But I think they can get the running game working. I think Tampa is being favored by way too much in this game.
Well, let's keep in mind, too, here, Pierce, Leonard Fournette will be back. I mean, that will make a little bit of a difference. That will be a boost for Tom Brady, right?
I mean, we haven't seen him on the field. We don't know if he's going to be 100% or what he's going to offer.
Okay.
He's also running back. So, do we really care that much?
Well, yeah. I mean, he catches like 7-8 passes a game from Tom Brady. Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. Eagles did win.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Oh, all right.
I'm just saying he doesn't just run the football. Like, he's Tom Brady's security blanket for sure. The only game this weekend, guys, that isn't a rematch from the regular season, you got the 49ers visiting Dallas. And the Cowboys are 3-point favorites, second highest total of 49.5 this upcoming weekend. So, Pierce, can you see a San Francisco upset?
No, I can't. I can't believe this line is what it is. What did the Cowboys do to deserve this? I mean, they should be bigger favorites. They scored 50 points the other day. They have the best defense in terms of DVOA. The offense is clicking. They were plus 1,100 to win the Super Bowl. They're now plus 1,200. What is going on? Am I missing something? What do the Cowboys have to do? And then the 49ers, yes, they won. Congratulations. But they did it against a Rams team that was indifferent. They were sleepwalking in that game. They weren't putting forth maximum effort. They're going to run into maximum effort this weekend at Dallas. I think that the 49ers are going to get smoked.
Okay, Jeff, are you as shocked about the spread as Pierce is? I mean, 49ers have to find a way to slow down this number one ranked scoring offense.
I admit, it's like I said off the top. I mean, this one stood out. I mean, +3 for San Francisco, who needed a last-second comeback just to make the playoffs, right? I mean, that's a lot of respect, and it's probably too much respect. I think Pierce is right. I'm not sure if I necessarily want to get on the Cowboys here, mainly because of the coaching matchup. You just mentioned the offense. Like, this San Francisco team is nearly impossible to shut down. Dallas is going to have to put up points here. So maybe you just bet the over if they want to win this game, because you're not holding San Francisco to less than 23 points. Like, it just doesn't happen these days. And you've got Kyle Shanahan against Mike McCarthy. It scares me a little bit, but +3, there is. Pierce is right. Like, there's not enough respect here being given to a Cowboys team who has been very good at covering spreads as well. So I would wait on this line. If you're just like, I want to bet the 49ers, but this line doesn't make sense, I would wait, because I think this one will go in favor of the Cowboys once more people realize how small this is, just the spread. So right now, this is kind of just a layaway for me. But yeah, it definitely looks like just a touch too small in terms of the spread right now.
And the Cowboys can't really focus on like a glaring weakness either with like the San Francisco defense. But then like on the other side, like Dallas ranks 21st in passing yards allowed and 16th against the run. So like San Fran can get on there and dominate time of possession.
I mean, I think the big thing here is the Dallas pass rush versus Jimmy Garoppolo. Yep. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest edge the Cowboys have. And you know, that's where the game could get really lopsided in terms of Dallas's favor if Jimmy G turns it over a couple times or they get a sack fumble. So I think Dallas does have a pretty big edge there.
Well, both of you guys have referenced already, like every single home team is a favorite this week, and to no one's surprise there. The good news is the DK Sportsbook is projecting some tight games, which hopefully will translate to the field. Like the Rams, 4.5-point favorite on Monday Night Football against division rival Arizona. Yeah, Monday Night Football playoff game. The Cardinals finishing the season 1-4, highest total on the board as of right now, 50.5. Jeff, how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want anything to do with either of these teams covering a 4.5-point spread right now. I mean, I know the Cardinals are coming in like they have like the one win in their last 5 games, but it was a win against a quality team. Like, it was a win against the Cowboys on the road. The Rams are, you know, I mean, they had the spot to put out a division rival. Sean McVay had a chance to eliminate Kyle Shanahan, a guy who's lost 5 games in a row to, and the Rams couldn't shut the door. Like, how on earth do you trust this team now to cover 4.5 points against the Cardinals? You look at the 2 matchups they had this year. It's very reminiscent of how these teams go. One team played well, the other didn't. And, you know, they're just very up and down teams that I think have holes and can be exploited. So, again, both the previous games between these two teams saw over 50 points. So maybe you play the over here too. But man, I mean, if I'm looking at the spread here, I'm actually pretty interested in the Cardinals because I know their offense has been a little bit down without DeAndre Hopkins, but the Kyler Murray factor, he could easily rush for like 100 yards and just keep this game close. So if I'm leaning a spread here, it's definitely Arizona early. I want nothing to do with either of these teams covering more than 3 points.
All right, Pierce, what's the play here? Rams and Cardinals, they split the season series. Each club won on the road.
The Rams are going to be the play, and I don't like laying the points. You cannot trust either of these teams, as Jeff's mentioned, but the Rams can turn it on. The Cardinals, they can't turn it off. They've got too many problems to get things back in check. The defense has some serious problems. They lost their key cornerback, Robert Alford, last month, and they've lost 3 of the 4 games since then, allowing 11 touchdowns and 1 interception. And even if you go back before that, they had the win over the Bears where they had 4 interceptions in that game. They still allowed a lot of yards to Andy Dalton. They still allowed a lot of yards to the running attack from the Bears. And then when they played Detroit, guess what? They didn't get any turnovers, and they allowed passing yards, and they allowed Detroit to run all over them. That's the biggest problem. The other pass defense is struggling for the Cardinals, but the rush defense is awful. It's miserable. You can't win games that way. Their offense is also running at about half speed. There's just too many problems on the Cardinals side. Yeah, the Rams have issues, but they're not that far away. Their defense can step up. Their offense can start clicking again. I think that the Cardinals are just falling apart.
Yeah, Pierce, after the Week 18 dust has just settled, though, like the matchups are all set, which team do you think has the best path to the Super Bowl through its like seeding, opponent? You can look at odds, overall potential here, all that stuff.
The Packers have the best path, but I wouldn't bet that just because there's really not that much of a return there. But they should be able to take their home field advantage and their rest and walk their way to the Super Bowl. But if I wanted to go in a different direction, I would look at the Cowboys. I really believe that the Eagles have a chance against Tampa. And if the Eagles win that game, that means Dallas gets another game at home in the playoffs. And then they could probably beat the Eagles. And then that means they just got to find a way to beat Green Bay, which is a long shot. But I think Dallas is definitely worth considering the way that they're playing.
Plus 1,200 to win the Super Bowl in the DK Sportsbook right now. What do you think, Jeff? Who's got the best path?
Yeah, I mean, look, it goes without saying the Packers have the bye. I mean, and look, like we said, I mean, Pierce and I both think the Eagles are very live underdogs this week. They could get a matchup with the Eagles, and like, I mean, as much as I like Philly as a scrappy team, I mean, I wouldn't give them much of a shot against the Packers playing in their second week in a row. But the Cowboys is the correct answer here of all the teams that are playing this week. Not only do they have the 3rd seed, but again, I mean, I just like them matched up. I mean, if they have to go on the road to face the Bucs, that's absolutely fine. They have playmakers in the secondary. They're a team that can run the ball a little bit, even against a good pass defense or rush defense, excuse me. And obviously, Dak playing at a high level with those receivers, I think they can beat the Bucs secondary. So I really like the Cowboys as the non-Packers option of all the teams playing this week. I think they're in a very good spot. It's going to be a tough thing. You know, they got to get to Jimmy G this week, but if they can get by the 49ers, I definitely see them making a run to at least the championship game.
Man, they're plus 600 to win the NFC conference. Rams have shorter odds at plus 450. That seems kind of wild as of right now, but Packers, Buccaneers, top 2 there to win the NFC. Guys, good stuff. Please stick around because we're going to hit on the AFC wildcard games coming up. As for the big football game tonight, let's go to Julian on unreasonable odds with Ben Rasa to tell us why Alabama will not have such an easy time moving the ball tonight against Georgia.
You came on unreasonable odds to talk conference championship weekend. You were high on Georgia. I didn't bet Georgia, but I didn't disagree with you. I let my awful Alabama to win the SEC minus 125 future ride and had a great time doing so. What happens this time around? How much are you looking at the first game? What's going to be different in the second game? All that type of stuff.
Yeah. So obviously I think the clear biggest takeaway is Georgia's defense is not invincible. They're very, very good. We still know that. They're not invincible, though. Alabama absolutely carved them up. Guys were running, particularly through the pass, guys were running wildly free. Now, one of those guys, and we'll get into this, was John Mechie, and he's not going to be there. I do think that Georgia learned some things, and they used that to their advantage against Michigan, particularly with these quick passes. Stetson Bennett was getting the ball out so incredibly fast against Michigan. It was diffusing that pass rush. And I think that's what they want to do. I was super impressed with what they did with James Cook, getting him in the receiving game. I didn't really see that against Alabama the first time. I kind of feel like Georgia, and rightfully so, they said, why would we change everything? We've dominated everyone. We're going to go in. We're going to do what we do. And Alabama had answers.
Yeah.
In a reverse, I want to ask you this. This is my biggest thing. It's almost ironic. Looking at Georgia this time, I do think it would be much, even though obviously we would have seen it once, I think it would be really hard to ask them to beat Alabama twice. I almost like in some way that they lost the first game, because to beat Bama twice seems even more difficult.
Yeah, you're saying to beat Georgia twice seems more difficult for
either team. Like if you won the first game, it's obviously you take something away knowing you can do it. And Bama might just have their number. I do think that that's something we should talk about. That Bama, I mean, Georgia's had these teams, they've been in these spots so many times against Alabama and they don't get there. But man, as a favorite, once again, they are still favored in this game.
right.
Whew, I do feel somewhat confident that Georgia can do some things this time around that they did not show in the SEC championship.
I agree with you. Losing in I misinterpreted the first time, or I just wasn't listening. Georgia losing the first game is good for Georgia.
Getting back for the rematch. Yes, I actually think it is, as ironic as that sounds.
In ways, yes. And so here's Alabama's disadvantage. Like, if Alabama lost the SEC championship game, they're out. Georgia knew you lose, you're in. So Alabama had to show everything in a must-win game to get in. That was the equivalent of the national championship game, as was the Cincinnati game. It was a do-or-die game, win-or-go-home game for Alabama. This will be Alabama's third win-or-go-home game in a row. This will be Georgia's second. So they had to show everything in that first matchup on December 4th. And now they happen to be playing the same opponent that they just showed everything to. So that's my one red flag with Alabama.
Welcome back, everybody. Monday presents a 7-game slate around the NBA. Tons of huge tournaments available for you to enter over on DraftKings. And here to price check salaries and share some of their studs and value plays this evening is DraftKings contributors Nick Fryer and Matt Meiselman. Favorite guard over 7K. Let's start with you, Nick.
Terry Rozier is one that jumps out to me big time. Of course, the Milwaukee-Charlotte game has the highest total on DraftKings Sportsbook. And while I think LaMelo Ball is the quality option with Drew Holiday still out for the Bucks, Terry Rozier has been providing much more value, similar fantasy output. He's been fire from deep lately, too, 15 for his last 26, and he just dropped 45 DK fantasy points on the Bucks on Saturday. Another guy who I know is kind of outside the rules a little bit, just right there though, is Seth Curry at 6.6K versus the Rockets, and that is also one of the higher game totals tonight. And he's coming off back-to-back 40-plus DK fantasy point outings with his usage rate. And he's in a situation where his usage rate has been at 23%. That's with out Tyrese Maxey and Shake Milton on the floor. So both of those guys are legitimate options tonight. But if we're just strictly talking over 7K, Terry Rozier is the guy I think who's going to give you the best value tonight.
Man, James Harden's sitting their highest priced guard. Matt, 10-5.
Yeah, I think it's tough for Harden with Kyrie Irving back to really expect him to have massive fantasy games. Obviously, there's a chance, but it's just a little less likely with Kyrie playing. That is one of a few games tonight where we do have to worry about a blowout, and the others, Philly is playing Houston, and then the one I think people will be scared of the most is the Jazz against the Pistons. For me, Donovan Mitchell makes for a really good GPP play because that's the game I think people are going to look away from due to the blowout the most. There's some value plays in those other two games with bigger spreads. But with Mitchell, what we see is with Rudy Gobert out of the lineup, the Jazz aren't going to be able to blow out teams as easily. And the games also just get higher paced because you don't have Gobert there playing really good defense. So I think it actually helps the Jazz from a fantasy perspective that Rudy Gobert isn't playing. Game stays closer. I think Mitchell should have to do more.
All right, Matty, take us to forward here. Give me a guy north of $7,000 you like.
So this is going to be kind of the chalk call here, but Giannis Antetokounmpo with Drew Holiday out. I just think this matchup and the situation that the team is in, like, there are some chalk pay-up options, and he's the one that I think you just kind of have to have because they're so shorthanded, and it's the best matchup possible. Like, there are teams that are worse at defense than the Charlotte Hornets, but the combination of bad defense, really high pace, and then also being good enough at offense where you don't have to worry about a blowout too much. I mean, the Bucks are only 2-point favorites in this game. They actually just lost to the Hornets 2 days ago. So Giannis is both forward and center eligible. I think because there were a lot of good center plays on this slate, you probably want to play him at forward. So this is probably the spot. I think you can find contrarian value plays. I think you can be contrarian elsewhere. Giannis is the one chalk guy, though, that I kind of think you need to play.
Dude, at least 52 fantasy points in his last 5 games, including 2 that hit the 70-point mark. Yeah, I mean, kind of feels like pin up for him wouldn't be a bad idea. Nick, what about you, man? Forward over 7K.
Yeah, I think Giannis is absolutely one of the better options tonight. But again, Matt was talking about how he might be a little bit chalky. I think Domantas Sabonis is another guy who you could pivot to, who's still a high-priced option at 10.3K going up against the Celtics. The big thing for him tonight is you got to monitor the status of Malcolm Brogdon. He is questionable tonight. In the situations without Brogdon and LeVert on the floor this season, Sabonis is averaging 1.23 DK fantasy points per minute. And I know the Celtics have been tough on opposing bigs from a fantasy standpoint, but Sabonis just had 58 fantasy points and then 64 in his last 2 games. So he's a guy I like a lot tonight. Evan Mobley is another one, too, if you're trying to find a cheaper option at forward, also center eligible at 7.3K versus the Kings. That's a team that has not done well against power forwards or centers this season. And Mobley, since the final day of 2021, has been providing largely 5 times value at this price point.
All right, Nick, let's go to favorite center here over 6K. I know Matt mentioned earlier Giannis has that center availability as well. And, man, the Hornets pretty bad on the defensive end net rating there against power forwards and centers.
Yeah, I mean, I like, of course, you got to like Giannis to do well tonight in some capacity, right? And he was a guy who was on my short list, of course. It would be stupid not to have that be the case because he just had 70 DK fantasy points against the Hornets on Saturday. But ultimately, Joel Embiid is the guy I'd rather pay up for tonight if I'm going to go and get for my high-priced guy at 11K against the Rockets. And I understand the concern about this being a blowout, but he just dropped 72.75 DK fantasy points on the Rockets last time out. And he's in a situation where his usage rate is absolutely absurd. I talked about it with Seth Curry a little bit, but it's even more ridiculous for Embiid. Without Maxey and Milton on the floor this season, Embiid has a 41.3 usage rate. So, I mean, I can't ignore that. What he already did against the Rockets recently, just over a week ago that happened. And this still has one of the highest totals on the DraftKings Sportsbook tonight as well. So Embiid is my favorite center tonight.
All right, who do you like, Matty, at center?
So my answer to the question is I don't think there's a center you need to have because there are a lot of good ones, and you can only roster, I guess, 2 of them, one at the utility spot, one at the center spot. Yusuf Nurkic is the guy that I think is the best points per dollar play at 7,000. But I'm going to go with Bobby Portis at 6,800 as the GPP guy because Nurkic is in a game where you definitely could see the Nets just blow out the Blazers. Kyrie's playing. The Nets are a really good team. Portland is missing a lot of guys. So with Portis, what you get is lower ownership because I think you'll see plenty of Joel Embiid, Giannis at center, probably some people play that. You have Sam Whiteside, you have Nurkic, and then Portis gives you a bit of leverage off Giannis. Like he does a lot of the same stuff statistically that Giannis does. So if you want to get a little bit different in tournaments, it's not that no one's playing Bobby Portis. Maybe he's 15%, 10%, somewhere in that range, but $6,800 is probably a little bit more than people want to pay for Portis, but I do think that's a little too cheap given how shorthanded the Bucks are. They don't have DeMarcus Cousins around either. That's kind of a big deal. Portis needs to do a little bit more. So I think he makes for a pretty good play in tournaments.
All right, before you guys take off, hook us up with your best value play under $4,500, Matt.
So I'll stick with center for this just because I just mentioned that there are a lot of them. With the Sacramento Kings, they don't have Rashawn Holmes, who's still in health and safety protocols, and they don't have Damian Jones, who is now out too. So they have 2 centers left. It's Alex Len and Tristan Thompson. And they're going up against the Cleveland Cavs, who you need to play a center against. When the Kings just played the Lakers, LeBron was the center. You could just play Metu, you could play Bagley at center. You don't really need that. But Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, you need centers against them. Alex Len started last night and was good, but I think Tristan Thompson has a chance to start tonight. The game did not go well for Sacramento, even though Len was good from a fantasy perspective. Tristan Thompson's $3,500, and he's also in a 10 o'clock game where if he gets announced as a starter late in the night, I don't think too many people are going to get there, especially having already locked up their center slots. So Thompson's my guy if he starts, but I think there's a good chance he does. He's only $3,500.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week for him off the court. Nick, who do you like? Value play under 4,500.
Yeah, when you go down to a 4.2K, there are 2 guys that jump out. Lance Stevenson is one who I would assume is going to be chalky if Brogdon is out tonight. That's the only situation I would want to play him, and he's done really well in those situations. But Lonnie Walker is the guy who I like a little bit more because we're not worried about so much about the status of his teammates because we already know Derek White, Keldon Johnson, and Doug McDermott are all out. And we saw what he did yesterday against the Nets. 20 shots in that game, 25 points, 39.75 DK fantasy points. I care more about the volume in this situation. Of course, you hope that the rest of that maintains or even improves. But if you're getting that kind of volume at this price going up against the Knicks, I can't turn that down.
Dudes, quick and dirty. We'll see what's cooking on the DK Sportsbook ahead of the AFC wildcard weekend right after this short break. Yes, we talked NFC wildcard weekend to start the show. Now it's time to discuss the AFC playoff picture. DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich and Jeff Ulrich are back. Julian Edlow now joining the party as well. Hey, Jules, what's your biggest takeaway on the AFC side when you look at the initial betting lines on the DK Sportsbook?
I mean, the AFC is pretty interesting. Obviously, it came together a little bit later, given that insane Sunday night game that we're all talking about. Another one of my big reactions is that you don't see the Indianapolis Colts in there. Thank you very much to your Jacksonville Jaguars, Emerson Lotzia, for cashing my Colts plus 150 to miss the playoffs. I buried that one, counted it as a loss. But when you look at what we do have on the board here, it's crazy how much that Sunday night game had implications just on where everyone else goes. I know that, the Patriots and Bills know each other well and split, and now that matchup with Cincy for the Patriots is gone, and the Raiders get it, so they're 6.5-point dogs in Cincy. I've gotten every Raiders game wrong all season, so I don't know. I think the Bengals win. I think the 6.5 is a perfect teaser piece. But given how I've bet the Raiders this year, they probably win that game. Pats Bills feels just about right. I mean, you split. It's on the road in Buffalo. I would lean to Buffalo there. They need another ridiculous wind game like Monday Night Football to come through on that one. And what's the last one? The Sunday night game. We get the largest point spread in like the biggest primetime spot. That's kind of weird. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts. Like, the Chiefs are going to win. I think that's the safest spot on the board. I don't know if Pittsburgh can cover or not.
I feel like I'm listening to the Unreasonable Odds podcast. So much information. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, we'll have like that just multiplied out into like 2.5 hours worth of content over the week. So plenty more of me rambling.
Cool, good. I'm excited for it. Jeff, what stands out to you on the AFC side, looking at the odds and lines?
Yeah, 2.5 hours of Julian. Count me in.
Well, Steve sometimes adds in some stupid wrong bets here and there, but mostly me.
Okay.
As long as you have to work the teleprompter, it's all good. I think that the AFC, the lines are mostly correct. I think the one that sticks out to me is the Bengals line. It's not that I don't like the Bengals in that game. It's just, you look at the Bengals. They lost to the Chargers, and then we just saw the Raiders beat the Chargers. It's a pretty big ask, right, for a team who doesn't have a playoff win in like ever. I don't know, but like a long time, right? So. The Bengals minus 6.5. That one, I believe, even opened maybe just a little bit shorter, so it's already gone up. Obviously, people believing in the Bengals, and I do think they'll win, but it's a big line, and not much respect being given to the Raiders there.
Pierce, what do you like? What do you not like?
You know where I'm going. Play the long shots.
Yeah, again.
9,000 to win it all. They're the team of destiny. I'll go over specifically how I think the Steelers can win this game against Kansas City. But something that no one's talking about, everybody's talking about all the timeout and what happened there. What about the life of a Pittsburgh fan over the last 24 hours, what they have gone through, winning a game in overtime, then the Raiders are going to win, now the game's in overtime, now the game's going to be a tie, then all of a sudden the Raiders decide to kick. I doubt that there's any Pittsburgh fans alive right now, awake, watching this program. Might be a couple of days of watching it on replay after they've recovered, but man, it's been a wild ride for them. I hope it continues.
It would have been hilarious after the celebration. You saw Mike Tomlin there on social media, everyone dancing in the locker room. Big Ben just sitting there mashing chips and dip on his couch, just thinking, "Oh my God, if they miss this kick, it's a tie, we're done." Kicking off the weekend though, we have the Bengals and the Raiders here. Jeff, can Las Vegas keep it within 6.5?
Well, I mean, again, I alluded to this off the start. This is the line that stuck out to me the most. Now, at the same time, I do think the Bengals win this game, and I'm not sure if the Raiders can keep this close. Look what the Raiders needed to do just to win that game in overtime last week. They needed to jump out to a 10-0 lead, and they couldn't shut the door on a young quarterback like Justin Herbert. Are they going to jump out to a 10-0 lead on the road again? Probably not. And now they have to face Joe Burrow and this great Cincinnati Bengals attack. I know they have one good corner in Casey Hayward, but guess what? The Bengals have T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd back there. I think the Raiders probably put up a little bit of a fight, and then they just fade late here. So yeah, I do think the Bengals, and this is a big game for the Bengals franchise, man. I mean, all these playoff losses, time to break the streak with the new quarterback. I know this line does feel a little bit chalky, a little bit like a trap, but I think the Bengals ultimately prevail here, and I think they probably cover too.
All right, Pierce, what do you expect here? Also, total sitting at 49.5 on the DK Sportsbook.
As a lifetime Ohio resident, I expect the Bengals to lose. Never won a playoff game since I was a very young boy. And I know Jeff's well, they got the new quarterback. Well, they said the same thing with Carson Palmer, and they said the same thing with Andy Dalton. It never worked out for them. Now, on paper, they should win, but on paper, they should have won every one of those playoff games that they lost. I think that they can win this one. If there's ever been, this is their best shot they've had in the last 30 years. They should win, but I don't expect them to cover this spread.
And Jules, running back Joe Mixon may hold the key to victory in this one. So we got to see what happens with him coming out of COVID-19 protocol.
Mixon against a poor Raiders run defense. And the only difference with Pierce, and I completely understand why he's so negative here when the same thing happens over and over for 30 years. Why would you think any differently? But Burrow and Chase are the best that they have had, Cincinnati. So if there's a time, it's now, and they're at home. Like Jeff said, the number's a little weird. I thought this would be more like the 4.5 that we see in New England. Buffalo would feel like the right number, but that doesn't change my mind that I also think the Bengals are going to win. So if I think they're going to win, is the 4.5 or 6.5 going to make a difference? Maybe, but there's no real key numbers in there other than 6. That's why I just think they're the perfect teaser piece, I guess, in this spot. But again, I can't get a Raiders game right for my life. This Raiders season, they start the season 3-0. They end the season 4-0. Sandwiched in between, they go 3-7. They're a bad team, 3-7. That 4 of their games, they won 4 games in overtime. That's 40% of their wins that are coin flips that could have gone the other way.
I mean, they couldn't get a stop. What do they have? 4 fourth downs to win the game last week? And they couldn't get a. I don't know. It's a hard team to trust.
The Chargers converted 4 4th and 10s or longer, including a 4th and 21 to get that game to where it got. I don't know. I can't bet on the Raiders. I'm leaning Bengals. For the total, I'll go over. I don't trust either of these defenses. I think Burrow and Chase air it out. Carr always seems to find somebody downfield, hooking it up there, so I'd lean over.
Yeah, and you can't forget all the turmoil that the Raiders had to overcome, off the field as well. But they have allowed an average of under 20 points a game over the last 4 weeks, in which, Jules, you have referenced that they've won all of those, ending the regular season on a win streak there. Let's go to the Patriots here. Patriots get the Bills, thanks to Brandon Staley's timeout. Bills are favored by 4.5, the lowest total of the weekend at 43.5. So barring swirling winds and snowfall, how big of an advantage does Buffalo have because of its explosive third-ranked scoring offense, Pierce?
I like the Patriots to cover in this game. The Bills are fun to watch. They're a great regular season team. They play good defense, and then they sit in shotgun and fling the ball around, kind of like a 90s Dolphins team. And you can win regular season games and get the fantasy points, but when you get to the playoffs, that one-dimensional style play doesn't really work. Maybe it's usually good for one playoff win. The Dolphins would always get eliminated in round 2, and I think we'll see the same for the Bills. But here's the thing. The Patriots are being disrespected. They're being disregarded once again, and we've seen this story over and over. As soon as people count out the Patriots, which they should because they haven't looked good lately, then all of a sudden Bill Belichick rallies the troops and they start winning games. I don't know if they win this game, but I believe that they'll cover.
All right, Jules, what do you believe will happen in this game? We saw the way Mac Jones looked yesterday, and it doesn't really feel like he's equipped to match Allen in that Bills-powered offense.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to go all Steve Buchanan on you, but weather matters in this game.
Yeah.
No joke. Buffalo came into New England on a very fair day for New England weather, winter-wise. It was not windy. It was not freezing, and they aired it out and beat the pulp out of the Patriots, embarrassed them. You go to Buffalo, you deal with a lot of elements in that Monday night game, and we saw what happened on the other side of it. The Bills have come out and said they're built to beat the Chiefs. They're built to air it out, play that kind of Kansas City game. They're built for a dome team. Now Buffalo's talking about building a dome. That's like Buffalo is outdoors and embracing the negative degrees and hailstorms and whatever. But seriously, like if it's a nice night in Buffalo, I think the Bills win by a touchdown or more. If it's 10 degrees, like it's looking like it might be, maybe a little bit of snow, maybe a little bit of wind, which is looking like it might be, I give the Patriots a real shot to cover and win the game. It's that simple. I like that it's a short week. Bill Belichick knows the Bills. He'll be ready for this game. The short week for Buffalo maybe gives them less time. I lean Patriots, but seriously, the elements really matter here.
Jeff, which way are you leaning?
I'm leaning Patriots too. Look, the Bills are a good team, but they've been winning defensively the last few games. Like you look at what Josh Allen has done. I'm sorry, Josh Allen has not played well the last 3 weeks. It was close with the Jets for a while last week. It was close with Atlanta for a while the last couple weeks. They needed their defense to come through. Now they played, like Pierce said, a disrespected Patriots team, a much better defense. I get it. It's a rookie quarterback in Mac Jones. And I'm not saying that the Bills defense can't rise up here again and make Mac Jones look silly, but this is the third time Mac Jones gets to see this Buffalo defense. I'd be expecting a little bit better play from him. And if the Patriots get even a little bit better play from him, we know they can run the ball, and we know their defense is probably going to give Josh Allen a little bit of trouble. I think this 4.5, if anything, is just a little bit too small. And I would lean on the Patriots side. I think you're going to see a close game regardless of the weather. I don't disagree that I think the bad weather favors the Patriots, but I think the Patriots can air it out a little bit too. And I think that if they get a lead in this game, it's going to be a little bit tough. They are going to need Josh Allen to step it up, and he can do that, but he really has not looked that good in the last 2 weeks.
No, he's got to break out of this funk. He's thrown for 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in his last 2 games. That was against the Falcons and the Jets here, guys. Steelers get into the playoffs. This is the last question. Steelers get into the playoffs at literally the last second of the regular season, so Big Ben postponing his retirement for at least another week. They head to Kansas City as 12.5-point underdogs. KC crushed Pittsburgh just 3 weeks ago. Totals 46.5. Julian, you expect a repeat of their last matchup or it to go a little differently?
I do. I don't know why it would go much differently. It's at Arrowhead. Pittsburgh does not have much in the tank offensively. They can't stop the run, so if Kansas City gets that lead and wants to run it, they should be able to. They're better against the pass, but it's Mahomes and Hill and Kelsey, so we'll see how much they can actually do. I think that using the Chiefs are kind of like a free square in my mind. So I think the popular tease is going to be like the Bengals down to a pick'em and Tampa to -2.5, but that's -120. And you're laying a couple points with Tampa. If you just go Bengals, Tampa, Chiefs on the money line, 3-team money line parlay, it's even money. So you're risking less juice and you're taking away the points with Tampa to just go with Kansas City money line. That's the way I would go about it. For like a weekend parlay or something, but I would lay the points with the Chiefs if I had if you made me choose in this game, because I just don't see how Pittsburgh stays in it.
Yeah, Jeff, Chiefs defense is the one side of this team that sparked that midseason run after a 3-4 start.
Absolutely. I mean, the Chiefs defense is good, but you know what? The Steelers defense could cause some problems here. And I think they are going to cause some problems here. And I certainly am not going to be betting the Chiefs on the spread here. I think the Chiefs probably prevail because they have Patrick Mahomes. And I'm just not sure if Ben Roethlisberger can get there. But I think this game could be a lot closer just because of the Pittsburgh pass rush. What gave the Chiefs problems last year? It was elite pass rushes, right? And, again, like the Steelers, I get it. Ben Roethlisberger can't throw the ball very far anymore. But this is a team that has wins over Tennessee, Cleveland, and twice over Baltimore. I know two of those teams aren't playoff teams, but they're still pretty solid teams. Pittsburgh is scrappy. Their defense keeps them in games, and they've actually been really good at covering spreads as well. I'm not inclined to take the bait here with Kansas City. I think they probably get through, but I think this game has the makings of being a lot closer than people think.
All right, Pierce, do you expect it to be closer than the first time around?
Absolutely. Let's talk about what the Steelers do well, and that's defend the pass. This is a passing league. If you defend the pass well, you win games. That's how you make the playoffs, and they did. You look at passing yards allowed, they're top 10. Passing touchdowns allowed, they're top 10. Pressure rate, top 10. Sacks, number 1. I don't believe that they're going to have trouble slowing down the Kansas City pass attack. Now, their rush defense is awful. It's terrible. That might kill them. But you look at Kansas City, that's not really Kansas City's strength. Their adjusted rushing yards from running backs this season ranks just 17th. So there definitely is a path to, the next round. The bigger issue, really, the thing that I can't quite calculate or reason in my brain is how Ben Roethlisberger and his offense are going to get going. But I can see the Pittsburgh pass defense slowing down Kansas City and keeping them in this game. You look at, they allowed almost 400 yards passing to Justin Herbert in week 11. But since then, the last 7 weeks, they're averaging 199 yards passing, 1.3 touchdowns, 1.3 interceptions. They're absolutely stopping the ball through the air. If you can do that, you can stay in games in the NFL.
I mean, absolutely playing with house money here too. The Steelers this is just like a free roll for them. I mean, they probably felt they had no chance of even playing in this game last week, a day ago. So.
Roethlisberger hasn't thrown for more than 159 yards in an outing since week 14. So it should be very, very interesting this weekend.
Always got to throw cold water on our takes.
All I do is throw facts out there, and you try to come back at me, and you have no argument because all I have are facts. Jeff Pierce, you are free to do whatever it is you do on a Monday. Jules, hang out. Let's talk some college football championship right after this.
Sure. That's the Steelers. As usual, there will be a lot on the line tonight when Alabama and Georgia collide in the college football playoff national championship game. DraftKings contributor Julian Edlow is back to give us a little betting preview of this one. Starting with the quarterbacks here, dude, what's a QB prop you're looking at?
Yeah, both quarterbacks really aired it out in the SEC championship game, Stetson Bennett and Bryce Young. Bryce Young, the key for Alabama in that blowout win. So I'll look to get some plus money here. Alabama should have some trouble running the ball, as they did in the SEC championship game, as every team that Georgia has faced this season. The difference is the only reason Alabama was the team that was able to beat Georgia is because they could really air it out. So Bryce Young is plus 130 to throw over 2.5 passing touchdowns. I think that they're going to get it done through the air, so I will take some plus money on that with Bryce Young.
Okay, how about a running back or receiver prop that you like tonight?
Yeah, so I will go to the Georgia side here. Freshman tight end Brock Bowers has been terrific for the Bulldogs this season. Alabama's defense has some weaknesses in the secondary. Georgia, despite losing, exposed them in the SEC championship game. Bowers had 10 catches for over 130 yards. Brock Bowers over 69.5 receiving yards in this one. It's been bet up a few yards. but I think he needs to be a huge piece of the Bulldogs. Unless Georgia really dominates this game and just runs, which is what they would love, but I don't think it'll be that easy. I think Brock Bowers is going to have to be heavily involved.
Okay, you got a touchdown prop. Like, who are you confident? Who do you feel confident in actually scoring tonight?
Yeah, I don't love the touchdown props as much. I'll probably sprinkle elsewhere. I guess so. Bowers is minus 130. He did score against Bama in the SEC title game. I think he's going to be the key piece of Georgia's offense, and they won't be able to just run it all game and play this game as low scoring as they're going to want to. So Brock Bowers minus 130 to score a TD jumps out to me. I will say, like, Bryce Young has to be on the move in order for Bama to be successful, and he did run one in the SEC title game. He's plus 300 to score one. That one stands out a little bit. And then Jahleel Billingsley, the Alabama tight end, he's plus 330 to score anytime. No John Mechie, obviously, Alabama's wide receiver 1. Georgia's going to be focused on those outside wide receivers. I think it could open up something for somebody like Billingsley on the inside there.
All right, what are we doing here with the total? Because right now, currently sitting at 52.5. Do you see it going over or under? Because the under here, 7-3 in Georgia's last 10 games overall.
Yeah, Georgia's an under team, but Alabama's going to speed these games up. The total pretty much goes with who you think is going to win. If Georgia wins, they're going to want to win this game 24-17, something like that, how they beat teams all season. If Alabama's going to win, it's going to look a lot like the SEC championship, except probably a little closer, and Georgia's going to have to start airing it out. So really, you're betting over if you like Bama and under if you like Georgia. I will say there's value technically as a sports bettor on the under in the SEC title game. This total was 48. Now it's up 4.5 points in the same matchup on a neutral field 5 weeks later without somebody like Mechie, who's one of the top offensive weapons. So strictly from a value standpoint, under would be the play. I would expect some sharp money to go there, but it's going to be a pass for me. I would rather bet the game on a side.
I mean, you can't deny the fact that Nick Saban and Alabama have been living rent-free here in Georgia's head. I'm going to get you out of here with this. We know Georgia is favored despite that loss in the SEC championship game. So who's taking it home tonight?
Yeah, again, there's only so much you can adjust it. It was 6.5 in the SEC title game. Alabama wins it, still on a neutral field, a rematch game, and Georgia was the best team all year. So Georgia has to be favored, but that does not mean it is right. Alabama has the better head coach. Alabama has the better quarterback. And Alabama's taking money on the money line. Like, Alabama as a dog is attractive. Nick Saban is an underdog as head coach of Alabama. 5-1 straight up. Roll Tide. Alabama gets it done. We're riding all the futures. We're taking Alabama money line. They're going to do it again.
Jeez Louise, was it 7th national championship then under?
I've lost count, but my bankroll appreciates them all.
Hey, man, amen. That's why we listen to you, man. You know what you're talking about. We love you, Jules. Thanks for the help.
I love you too.
Oh, thank you so much. We'll bring it home with some sticky puck in 60 seconds. Three games on the NHL slate tonight, and two dudes here to talk about it. RotoWire's Paul Bruno and AJ Scholes. AJ, you're up first. Who are you paying up for in DFS this evening?
Look, for me, it's hard to argue against using Nathan McKinnon at any price range when you consider how productive he is, but you can save 2K at just the center position and get Mika Zibanejad instead with a much more favorable matchup. So I think you have to at least consider fading McKinnon at the top. I also don't love taking Ovi or Rantanen, who are at the top of the price range, when you could get either Landeskog at 65 or Panarin at 59. So I just don't think you need to go all the way up on the smaller slate tonight.
All right, who's worth paying up for, Paul?
You know what? I kind of agree, but I kind of disagree, if that makes sense. I think you have to consider at least two of the three Avs from their top line. All three are on fire, of course. So I think the thing to do is really take Landeskog, the cheaper of the three, as AJ pointed out, $6,500, and one of McKinnon at $9,400 and Rantanen at $8,500. The other guy I target in this range is Brad Marchand, who's priced at $7,200. That's ahead of a tough matchup in Washington. Love him or hate him, and you know which side of the fence I'm on in this situation. He's obviously the key Bruin every night, so you got to take a look at him this evening.
Paul, who's the best value play, though?
In the sub 5,000 range, I go back to Colorado for Andre Burakovsky, who's their left winger on the second line. He's been producing at just under a point per game all year on Nazem Kadri's wing. He gets the favorable matchup against a Seattle club that is really looking like your traditional first-year expansion team. They've been blasted for almost 5 goals a game in their last 5 outings. And another couple of guys that I like in this range are Conor Sheary and Lars Eller of the Caps. Sheary costs only $3,500, has 8 points and 25 shots in his right wing role in the second line in the potent Caps attack. And you know the Bruins will be focusing their attention on Ovi's line, and that should free up the second line. And that means Lars Eller is also a good look here. He's only going to cost $3,200. I got to give this guy props because he's risen to the challenge of being a top 6 player for this team that's been without one of their top 2 centers much of the last month, and Eller's produced at that level in that period.
AJ, who you looking at for some value?
Well, Paul missed the best player on the Caps in terms of value here. It's TJ Oshie coming in at 3,800 tonight. Looks like he's going to return to the lineup, play for the Bruins, and they're going to put him on the top line with Ovechkin based on, practice lines this morning. It's too good of a spot to pass up on him here. I also wouldn't sleep on a guy like Marcus Johansson for Seattle. He comes in at 2,600. We've got him penciled in on Seattle's top line, and we know that Colorado is not exactly a shutdown team defensively. They like to win their games in blowouts. So Seattle players could have some value tonight, and especially when you're paying under 3K for a top line guy, it's a good look.
All right, well, over on the DK Sportsbook, which game total do you like to go over tonight, AJ?
Well, I'm honestly surprised that the total for the Rangers and Kings isn't higher. Comes in at 5.5, which is really the lowest we ever see. But I'll be honest, I think any one of these games, or actually all three, could go over. Even Boston, Washington at 5.5, that's an easy over with the offensive pieces both teams have. We're going to see Zachary Foucault in net for the Washington here, so they're not rolling out their best guys. And then, the last game, even at 6.5, Seattle and Colorado, I mentioned offensive powerhouse for Colorado. They could easily hit 6.5 on their own.
Paul?
The Avs are the league's most potent offense, Emerson, averaging almost 4.5 goals a game on the year, and they've been even better than that most recently. So let me put it this way. If they can get almost 50 shots on goal against the Leafs, how many do you think they're going to get against the expansion club tonight? I think that they could get to the overall by themselves, in fact. I think the other two games, though, I disagree with AJ. I think they can both be low-scoring affairs, so I'm all in on Colorado tonight.
Yeah, Kraken Avs 6.5, highest total on the board on the 3-game slate on the DK Sportsbook. All right, Paul, slate of brew pick here. Favorite DraftKings Sportsbook bet around the NHL tonight?
Okay, I'm going to go rapid fire because I got a bunch. I'm going to go back to Marchand for a goal tonight at plus 155, thinking he's going to factor into the Boston scoring since he plays in every situation for the Bees. I love the call on Oshie. I left that one for AJ and thought if he doesn't pick it up, I'll mention it here. So good for you, Age. I take him to score. I pick plus 230 up in that situation. From the other games, I'll take Landeskog to score at plus 150 and Rantanen at 145 to get more than 1.5 points. And in the late game, I'm going to go with the Rangers to win a close one in a low-scoring affair, so I'll take them at minus 110.
AJ, favorite bet?
I liked all of Paul's picks until the last one. I like the alternate puck line in that Rangers game, and you can get New York minus 1.5 here coming back plus 250 value. I know the Kings aren't the walkovers they've been the past couple of years, but they're struggling to produce goals at 2.71. And New York is limiting goals around 2.5 on the year, and they've got a ton of offensive weapons. They're getting Panarin back, so I think they easily cover 1.5 here.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Appreciate you, AJ. Appreciate you, Paul. That is a show. So Jesse will join me tomorrow morning for a Tuesday edition of The Sweat at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We got Madden Sims kicking off at high noon. The slate will arrive tonight at 5 o'clock. So Glash is there, Matty Mice, and Jeff Ulrich. They're going to look ahead to the NBA tonight, NHL, which we just discussed, and NFL playoffs. Good episode coming up 5 o'clock tonight over on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Adios, everyone.